Bhagavad Gita gathering. And before we are going through chapter 2. Before we begin with our hearing of Bhagavad Gita, does anyone want to share any reflections or some specific question from our last reading, or should we dive right in? Gangalila is giving us a thumbs up. Okay, great. Okay, so we're going to dive right in. So I'm going to pick up from, I think we ended with verse 20 of the second chapter, and we were hearing the teachings of Atma, soul. You know, this is the, you know, none of the teachings of, you know, any spiritual culture, actually, we don't even need to come to Krishna consciousness. Any of the Vedic teachings, or even most religious teachings in the world today, they are built on the understanding that the recognition that we are eternal beings. When this body drops down and dies, that's not the end. You know, that's all spiritual practice, all spiritual culture, aspiration, it's built on that principle. That's what makes it meaningful. If you don't believe that, if you don't have the fortune to believe that, then nothing really makes sense. Okay, Marie is saying with the exception of classical Judaism. Of course, there are some exceptions. You know, also Buddhism, they don't believe in the eternal existence of the Atma, you know, eternal existence of consciousness. There are a few exceptions, but for the most part, and here, you know, especially, you know, on the Vedic platform, entering into the teachings of Bhagavad Gita, it's all built on this foundation that we are eternal souls. So then where do we go from there? You know, if we live in that consciousness that when we die, this is not the end, then that changes our lives. Come sit here.
I am. I'm just getting your drink table already. You gotta have a drink
no, if
table.
it changes everything. You know, like you know, maybe someone can correct me with some more details, like Marie. But we, you know, we hear like in you know, Socrates, right? That he, you know, he was trying to make this declaration that, you know, when we die, that's not the end. So we need to start preparing for the afterlife. This was the kind of like an inconvenient truth that many did not want to hear in the Greek society of the day, because many persons were living this kind of hedonistic lifestyle, right? That we're all going to die anyway, so let's just live life to the max and do whatever we feel like and do whatever we want. You know, and we hear about these orgies, crazy orgies, right? Where persons would eat, you know, to their fill, and then they'd purge themselves of the food and so they could fill their belly again, right? There was this rampant spirit of hedonism. Why? Because they're living with the idea that we're all going to die and it's all going to end and there's nothing after that, right? But Socrates was coming down and saying, no, actually the soul is eternal. We need to think about that. You know, if we live in that consciousness that there is life after death, that the soul is eternal, there is more, then that changes how we live here and now. So this is where Bhagavad Gita is beginning, with this foundational teaching. First, understand this, then from here we can go on to so many finer conceptions. But it only means something if you appreciate this fundamental truth that we are eternal beings. So we've just been hearing some of these verses in chapter 2 of Bhagavad Gita, and so we're going to pick up here. I'm going to start with verse 20 again. Na jayate mriyate va karachin nayam bhutva bhavita va na bhuya ajo nitya shashvato yam purano na hanyate hanyamane sharire. I'll read a few verses and then go to the translation. Neda vinashinam nityam ya enama jamavyayam katam sa purusha parta kam gatayati hantikam vashamsi jirnani yata vihaya navani grinati naroparani Tata sharirani vihaya jinan yanyani samyati navani dehi. Nainam chindanti shastrani, nainam dahati pavaka, na chainam kledayantyappo, na shoshayati maruta, achedyo yam madayo yam, akledyo shoshayevacha, nitya sarva gatastanur, achalo yam sanatana, avyakto yam achintyo yam, avikaryo yam uchate, tasmadevam viditvainam nanushochitam arhasi. So the soul is neither born. The soul is neither born nor dies. It has neither been nor will it be created because it is unborn and eternal. It is ever youthful, yet ancient. It is not destroyed when the body is destroyed. O Partha, another name for Arjuna, knowing the soul to be indestructible, eternal, birthless, and immutable, how can a person kill or cause anyone to be killed? As a person adopts new garments, discarding those that are old and worn, similarly, the soul continues to adopt new bodies, leaving those that are old and useless. And this is a verse that our Gurudev appreciated very much. And I heard him quote this very much, many times. It's something that everyone can relate to. You know, we put on our fresh clothes in the morning, we discard them at the end of the day, and the next day we put on a new set of clothes. And so for those who have awakened vision, that's how they see these bodies, you know. And you know, and it was, you know, this is one of the privileges that we had, you know, that many of us had in the having the association of an enlightened person like our Gurudev, Srila Govinda Maharaj, where we saw, you know, like, you know, we saw sometimes he would receive news of some death, and it, you know, he was completely detached from that conception of death. Like what we're reading here in Bhagavad Gita, it's like changing your clothes, you know, and you know, we hear stories like that. You know, my mother was sharing that the other day. Like we hear persons who have these out of body experiences, and they, you know, they literally see their body below them, you know. And our Gurudev, our divine master, he was always living in that consciousness that he's not, this body is just a temporary dress. You know, this body that we invest so much energy into, so much attention, we experience so much anguish over, right? We, you know, we obsess about our appearance, and we, you know, there's so many emotions that we go through involving our, like how much of our time and energy and emotion is invested in our appearance. You know, it's sad. Like, let's not think about it too much. It's a little sad to think about that. No, but for the enlightened souls, they're seeing this is just a temporary dress. This life is actually like the blink of an eye. You know, just like insects. There are some insects, they only live for a few days. I think some only live for a few hours. You know, and they look at us like we're these immortal beings. No, but actually it's all relative, right? Our life for the enlightened person, our life is just like that insect who lives for a few hours. No, so this life is just like the blink of an eye. And you know, as we get old, you know, I'm 37 now, you know, as you get older, you start experiencing old age and wrinkles and health issues. And it's like, wow, you know, just a few years ago, I was like 20 years old and I was invincible. I could do anything, you know? So it's all moving very, very quickly. You know, this body is just here for a few days and gone tomorrow. You know, but that soul within, so the enlightened beings, they're operating on a different platform. They're seeing that Atma, they're seeing that eternal spark within. So as a person adopts new garments, discarding those that are old and worn, similarly, the soul continues to adopt new bodies, leaving those that are old and useless. Weapons cannot pierce the soul, and fire cannot burn it. Water cannot wet it, and air cannot dry it. It is said that the soul is indivisible, and cannot be burned, moistened, or dried. It is eternal. It reaches all planes, yet remains still, immovable, and ever present. It is imperceptible, inconceivable, and untransformable by the sixfold transformations, which are birth, existence, growth, maturity, diminution. Diminution is a real thing. You know, like you actually start to shrink. Diminution means, like, for those whose English isn't their first language, like, it means like you get smaller, you know. And I saw someone a few weeks ago, and I had last seen them like 15 or 20 years ago, and they literally became shorter. You know, this is a real thing. You know, diminution and destruction. You know, so these are the sixfold transformations, which the soul is unaffected by. Therefore, knowing the nature of the soul as such, there is no reason to lament for it. So it's, you know, all of this discussion is not to make us depressed, right, about the temporary and fallible nature of our bodies, but rather, let's not get stuck on that. You know, let's give attention to that eternal aspect within. Let's not be sidetracked by this momentary, you know, blink of an eye that is the existence of our bodies. You know, but let's give attention to that eternal aspect within, and don't lament over what is not worthy of lamentation. So we can continue. Atachainam nitya jatam nityam vamanyase mritam tatapi tvam mahabaho nainam shochitam arhasi jatasya hi dhruvo mrityur dhruvam janma mritasya cha tasmara pariharerite natam shochitam arhasi avyaktadini bhutani vyaktamadhyani bharata Avyaktani danya neva tatra ka paridevana ascharjavad pashyati kaschidenam. It's a beautiful verse. Ascharjavad pashyati kaschidenam ascharjavad vadati tataiva chanya ascharjavad chainam anya shinoti shudvapyanam vedana chaiva kaschit. Dehi nityam avadyoyam dehe sarvasya bharata tasmat sarvani bhutani natam shochitam arhasi swadharmam api chaviksha navikampitam arhasi dharmyadi yutta treyonyat kshatriyasya na vidyate. And, O best of warriors, even if you think that the soul is perpetually subject to birth and death, you still have no reason to lament. For one who is born, death is certain. And for one who dies, he must be reborn to undergo the reactions of his past actions. Therefore, you should not lament over the inevitable. O Bharata, when all living beings are unmanifest before birth, manifest between birth and death, and again unmanifest at death, why lament for them? Some see the soul as astonishing, and this is a beautiful verse. Our Gurudev and Param Gurudev, Srila Sridhar Maharaj, they quoted, I've heard them quote this on a number of occasions. The word ascharja, means astonishing or wonderful. You know, Goswami Maharaj, one of our teachers, he used to refer sometimes to Acharya Maharaj as Ascharja Acharya, that he is astonishing. So this word Ascharja is being repeated in this verse in regards to the nature of the soul. Ascharjavat pashyati, those who see the soul, they describe it as Ascharja, as astonishing. Ascharjavat vadati, those who describe it, they will describe it as astonishing. And those, so ascharjavat pashyati kaschidenam. What's this word? Shrutva, referring to hearing. So some see the soul as astonishing. Some describe it as astonishing. Some hear of it as astonishing. While those unfortunate, although hearing, they know nothing about it. So Srila Sridhar Maharaj, he commented about this verse that, another point here is that, and we were discussing this yesterday, I think, or Tuesday maybe in our meeting, that, within the Vedic dialogue, there's kind of this broadness in the usage of different terms, like in terms of the connotation, there's this broadness. So like Atma, soul, sometimes it refers to the Jivatma, the individual soul, but sometimes it refers to Paramatma, the supreme soul. It's like we're talking about spirit, in a broad sense. So whether it's like the individual, infinitesimal, finite spirit, or the infinite, absolute spirit, there's some broadness. Sometimes it means one, sometimes it means the other. So here also this verse, like specifically in this context, it's referring to the individual Atma, but in a broader sense, it can also be referring to the nature of divinity, in general. And so in one place, Srila Sridhar Maharaj, she's saying, like at every step towards the Lord, we will be astonished. Every step towards him will be wonderful. We will be filled with wonder. What's that? Mukam karoti vachalam. Mukam karoti vachalam. Pangum langai tegirim yat kripa tamaham bande Shri Gurun dinataranam. This is a verse describing Guru, but there's another version which is also glorifying the Lord, that by his grace the dumb can speak, the lame can cross mountains, such is the wonderful mercy of Shri Guru and the Lord. So at every step towards the Lord, one will experience wonder, astonishment. If we are making a real approach, we should be experiencing something of that. He of Adbhuta Kram is one name of the Lord. Adbhut is like a synonym, you could say, of Ascharya, like wonderful, wonderful, astonishing. This is the nature of divinity. Krishna consciousness is Nava Yovanam, ever fresh. There's always a fresh download that's coming down. That's, and are we connecting with that? Srila Sridhar Maharaj also mentioned once how, like, this is the proof, as to whether we're really connecting in the right current, whether we're really connecting to the real substance of Krishna consciousness, that we should be experiencing something new, something vital, something fresh. If it is something real, it shouldn't be something we're doing by rote, we're doing mechanically, but there should be something new and vital that's always coming through. And another point that Srila Sridhar Maharaj made in connection with this verse in particular is that he said, and this is in Subjective Evolution of Consciousness, this book, this is discussed, that we, like he says, like our practice will become more substantial once we have some real touch of that plane. Like once we, even like just in terms of our own Atma, like once we feel the wonder, like this Ascharya, the wonderful nature, Ascharyavat, the wonderful nature of the soul, then everything that we're doing, it will become more in earnest. Because again, going back to the original point, the premise of all spiritual practice is that we are eternal souls, right? And so accordingly, until we've really felt some touch of that within ourselves, our faith will not be so strong. But once we get some touch, some hints, like, oh, there's this higher element within myself. There's a higher being within myself. Once we get some feelings, just some glimpse of that, then everything we're doing, it will become more serious, more in earnest. Like, oh, this is real. what I've heard from my gurus, what I'm hearing from the scripture and the saints, this is really real. It will move from the plane of theory into the realm of reality and the real field of practice. Okay, continue with this English translation here. Next verse. Oh, Bharat. But it is it also requires some grace, It also requires some grace. There's one story Srila Gurudev told of one occasion when our Gurudev was leading a pilgrimage in Badarik Ashram. That's in the Himalayas, is that right? Badarik Ashram. Here Chintamani Devi, our glamorous Hare Krishna hostess. Srila Govinda Maharaj, she was leading a pilgrimage in Badarik Ashram. And Srila Sridhar Maharaj accompanied the group on that occasion. However, Srila Sridhar Maharaj, he showed some serious illness at that time. And so he wasn't able to participate. And he was in his room for some days with a very, very high fever, could not leave his bed. And then on one occasion, there was some scholarly gentleman who came to visit. And in India, there's a whole tradition. There's a whole tradition of debate. Like it's an honored tradition of scholarly, scriptural, spiritual debate, discussion. And then there's this whole culture, this whole tradition of these scholars like traveling throughout India and finding persons to debate with, and then kind of establishing themselves as their superior pundit, their superior scholar. There's a whole tradition, long-standing tradition of this in India. So there was one scholar like this traveling, and he heard about Srila Sridhar Maharaj, our grandfather guru, and so he wanted to come and have some discussion with him. So he came to the residence where they were staying, but he was told, Sridhar Maharaj is not well, he cannot see any visitors now. And so instead he had some discussion with some of the other god brothers of Srila Sridhar Maharaj, who were also staying in this place and accompanying the pilgrimage. And they were also these god brothers of Srila Sridhar Maharaj, they were also very scholarly, very knowledgeable, very experienced devotees, senior persons. But they were not able to satisfy him. And this was the point, this is the point of discussion of his argument, was what is the proof that the Atma exists? Atma, the soul, spirit, God. What is the proof that Atma exists? Okay, we've got people I'm logged into the host account, so I have all the meeting requests here coming up. Okay. So this was his point of argument. Like, how can you prove that the Atma exists? And so they were going back and forth on this point, but this gentleman was not satisfied by any of what these senior scholarly persons had to say. And then meanwhile, and there's an element of humor here, I feel. Meanwhile, Srila Sridhar Maharaj, he's in the next room, high fever, stretched out on his bed. And he can't stand that this man will leave unsatisfied. So he manages to pull himself up, sits up in his bed, he's in the next room, and he calls out in this very weak voice, "Bring him here, bring him in here." and so they brought him in to Srila Sridhar Maharaj, and within 20 minutes, Srila Sridhar Maharaj convinced him. Within 20 minutes, and he quoted this verse from the scripture Srimad Bhagavatam, Atma Panigyana Mayo, begins like that, And more or less the verse is saying that, some say that the soul exists, the Atma exists, some say it doesn't exist. But this debate will continue eternally, because some persons have the eyes to see it and other persons don't have the eyes to see. It's a simple argument, right? And but that man, he was hearing that from Srila Sridhar Maharaj, he was convinced. And he told Srila Sridhar Maharaj, like, I know that verse, like, this isn't a new verse to me, this isn't a new argument to me, but it's the way in which you're telling me. Like, I can feel the potency, I can feel that Shakti coming through you, the light coming from your eyes. I can see this is real. You're not just a scholar on a podium giving a lecture and quoting citations from various scriptures, but you're living that, you're speaking from that plane. And that was what moved him, that was what convinced him. So it's an interesting point, because ultimately faith, it does not depend on, mental corroboration, right? Intellectual corroboration, or it doesn't depend on a convincing argument. You can make all the convincing arguments in the world, but ultimately you have to have some touch of that plane. You have to get some feeling of it, by the grace, by the mercy of those souls who are living in that higher plane. Okay, we'll read a little bit more and then let's open our field here. We want to hear from others. Marie is saying, you can practice trust, but faith is a gift. Absolutely. Faith is a gift. Ultimately, it is a gift. It is a gracious gift. Okay, we'll read a few more verses and then we can open our group here for some discussion. So I think we ended, I don't think I read, I don't know if I read 31. So the soul dwelling within the bodies of all living beings is eternal and cannot be slain. Therefore, you need lament for no one. Moreover, considering your natural duty, you have no reason to waver, since there is no action more auspicious for a warrior than a battle for justice. Okay, so this is a bit of a sticky verse. Especially in our modern context where there's so much, terrible exploitation that goes on in the field of war in the name of some so-called good cause, right? And there's more and more awareness about this today. But so in order to understand this verse, we need to understand the context. And this is within the context of the Varnashrama system of India, the ancient social religious system of India, where every person, according to their nature, they are allocated a particular role, duty within society. And so there's the Brahmin class. There are 4 principal classes. There's the Brahmin class, which are kind of like the head group. And they're representing, spiritual teachings, the spiritual version of things. And they're like the head, right? Each of these different groups within society, there's also an analogy given of them representing different parts of the body, right? So the Brahmins are like the head, like they're the guides. They're seeing things with higher spiritual, broader vision. And then you have the Kshatriyas, and the Kshatriyas, they are the warrior class. They're the kings, they're the rulers, the administrators, they're the protectors of society. That's their duty within society, to defend, to protect, and to fight when necessary for the sake of justice and protection of the righteous. And so Arjuna, he is a Kshatriya, he's a warrior. This is his duty. And so Krishna is pointing this out to him, like this, you are fighting for a good cause. And therefore it is appropriate that you take up you accept this duty, for the sake of justice. That is your allocated duty within society. That is your contribution to a better world, to a better society. And there's this word here, everyone knows the word dharma, right? And then there's this word here, swadharma. Swa means the self. So swadharma means like one's own dharma. Everyone has a particular dharma, particular path, particular duty that is appropriate for them. So Krishna is telling him, this is your swadharma, to fight for justice. You're a warrior, a spiritual warrior, if you want to use that phrase. But maybe we won't use that phrase. But so it is right, it is correct of you to engage in this battle. Don't be weakened by sentimental concerns. And then now we have a really interesting commentary here. And this is from Bhaktivinoda Thakur, I believe, but maybe this is one of Srila Sridhar Maharaj's own commentaries. So we'll read this commentary. So here, this commentary is bringing out this point that one's swadharma, and this is a really important point in Bhagavad Gita. So one's swadharma, it can be conceived that everyone has, we have a dual swadharma. Everyone has two dharmas, actually. There's the within the relative sense, like our duty here and now in the immediate day to day, that, I'm a mother, I'm a father, I'm a teacher, I'm a student, I have children to care for, I'm a bus driver, I have an aunt or to take care of, whatever it is. Like we all have our own, our grandchildren, neighbor. We have particular duties in the immediate sense around us, and we cannot ignore that. We cannot overlook that. But we have another dharma too. That's our spiritual dharma. That's where we exist within the eternality of the whole. And we can't neglect that either. So this is being pointed out here in this commentary, which we will read right now. One's natural duty or swadharma is of two types, relative or absolute. According to the soul, this is just popping in my head. And like you have like your long-term high interest savings account, and then you have your like immediate bank account, which you'll use for day to day, right? So that high interest long-term savings account, that's for the future. Like you're investing in that for your future welfare, and then you also have your account for your day-to-day needs. We could think of it in that way, I think. We need to make that long-term investment in that eternal Atma, eternal self within. So back to this commentary. One's natural duty or swadharma is of two types, relative or absolute, according to the soul's state of either material bondage or liberation, respectively. In the liberated state, the natural function of the soul is purely spiritual devotional service for the transcendental pleasure of the Supreme Lord alone. But in the state of material bondage, a person's natural duty possesses mundane attributes. The conditioned soul accepts various births throughout the 8,400,000 species of life, according to his actions, until by the influence of piety, he obtains a human birth. Then, according to his nature, he may adopt a position and prescribed duty in the God-centered socio-religious system, Daiva Varnashram, which helps one attain the natural duty of the liberated state. In this respect, the natural duty of the liberated soul is somewhat covered by the relativity of the mundane material world. Yet, within the God-centered socio-religious system, it is nonetheless considered a person's natural duty. As, for example, smoke-covered fire is still considered fire, despite its covering. So, whether we like it or not, somehow or another, we got here, and there are persons who will, endlessly debate this point how we got here and why we got here, but we don't need to go into that. We're here. Somehow or another, we got here. We signed the contract. And so now we have to adjust to that. So even like the fact that, sometimes I think about how Shukadev Goswami, one of the great saints in our line, he didn't wear clothes. Why? Because he was totally liberated from the bodily conception of life. He did not even distinguish between male and female. So he had like zero obligations, for societal conventions in this world. But we have to, we cannot pretend, oh, who cares about this body? No, we are on the bodily platform. We can't deny that we aren't. And so we make certain, adjustments for that. We wear clothes. Like, let's just bring it down to a really basic level here. We wear clothes. That's part of our duty, our swadharma. That like part of like our duty on the material side of things. Like, we need to wear clothes. We need to eat food. We need to take medicine. We may have people who are dependent on us. We have to take care of them, children and relatives and friends and so on. We have to pay taxes. Like there are all these, we don't pretend that we are above the world or above the system, above worldly obligations. No, we are living in that plane. We brought ourselves here. We agreed to that. Maybe we didn't read the fine print, but we still signed the paper and we came here. So now we have to deal with that, and we have to harmonize with our environment and make these adjustments. But at the same time, we don't want to get totally bogged down with that. We don't want to make that the be all and the end all. We want to remember that fundamental spiritual duty that we have. That eventually all these things, they're going to vanish. I say eventually, but like I was saying in the beginning, it's actually like in the blink of an eye, in the big picture of things. It's all going to end in the blink of an eye. So we need to make that long-term investment too. We have to give attention to that. So this is like a really helpful kind of framework to help to, that helps us look at our life and kind of see, okay, this is more on that side, this is more on that side, and where are my priorities? Where do I need to give more or less attention? It's a helpful framework that can help us to give more focus to our spiritual life in a way that also doesn't, neglect our material needs. Okay, let's see. I'll just end. I want to end with this next verse, and then we can open our floor here. So the next verse, this is also in our list of well-known important verses of Bhagavad Gita. And it's beautiful, some beautiful points here. Yajit, so this is verse 32, chapter 2. Yajit chaya chopapanam swargadvaram aparitam Sukhinakshatriya parta labante yudam indrisham. O Partha, only the most fortunate warriors are blessed with the opportunity of such a battle, which has come to you like an open door to heaven. So a few points to be discussed here. One, which is kind of more within the relative plane, in the immediate context in which Sri Krishna is speaking, is that it is told in the scripture that if somebody, if a kshatriya, like someone who's actually considered to be in this warrior class, and this is their duty to protect their society, if they engage in a battle for justice, with the proper intention, with the proper motivation, and the circumstances are all correct, then if they die in such a battle, then they will go to heaven. So even though apparently you'll say, oh, they lost, they died, no, actually, because they were serving a higher cause, then they will go to heaven. No. And so, this is one point, but that's not so much our interest here. This is more on this is within the saguna plane. This is still within the worldly plane. That heaven, that's not our goal. That's not our destination. That's still within the, this plane of the 14 material, 14 planetary systems within the material zone. So that's not so much our interest. This is within the relative plane. But more of our interest is that we can extract a broader principle from here. That, and this is how our gurus have discussed this verse, that when we're on the path at different times, there will be challenges that come, right? And those challenges, those difficulties, they may be disheartening to us. They may knock us down. We may quarrel with those circumstances also. We may try to defy those circumstances. We may complain about those circumstances, or we may reject them in various ways. But what are we being told here? What you are conceiving to be a difficulty, what you are considering to be an obstacle, this is like an open door to heaven. This is an opportunity. The Sanskrit here, it's so nice. Svarga dwaram. Svarga is referring to heaven. Dwara means a door. Svarga dwaram apavritam, an open door, it's open. Svarga dwaram apavritam. And sukhina kshatriya, only happy, fortunate warriors are blessed with this opportunity. I'm just looking here in the word for word. So this is actually an opportunity. What you're conceiving of as an obstacle, this is an opportunity for promotion. This is an opportunity for evolution. So don't be disheartened. Seize this opportunity. See the advantage that is here. You can grow from this. You can get something from this. Or to bring it down to a really, basic level. If it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger. Right? If you can get through this, you're going to come out a better, bigger, brighter, more beautiful person. So take it as an opportunity. Like you own this. Don't allow yourself to become a victim. Don't put yourself in victim mentality, but you own this. You take this as an opportunity and grow from this. Come out a more beautiful person from this. So I love this verse. It's a very encouraging verse of Bhagavad Gita. And I think it's a nice meditation to end our reading with today. And now I would love to open the floor and hear from some of our enlightened thinkers in the group. Also want to welcome a few more friends joined. Braja Mohini Didi joined us. Our worshipable Braja Mohini Didi. And Narottam also joined us, dear brother. Charu Damodar, also a dear brother, joined us. Anjil, our sister, dear sisters, joined us. Jayadev, beloved brother, and also Lua Fadius, who I believe is in Brazil. Welcome. Very happy to have you with us. Saver Rupa also joined us, beloved sister in South Africa. So happy to be here with all of you. Dandavat. Dandavat. So we have some little bit of time left. Does anyone want to share any reflections on anything that we just went through, or pose a topic or question related in some way? That would be wonderful.
Hare Krishna, can I quickly share?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, I wanted to just do a reflection I wanted to share. I remember I was in 12th grade when the 9/11 attacks happened, and then I was thinking, maybe I should join the armed forces. And then I was like, okay, they probably put me on the front line. I would be one of the first ones to go. But then I remembered this verse from the Bhagavad Gita, even though I didn't know the verse specifically. I knew the context that, of Kshatriya fighting would go to Svargaloka, at least, or like the heavenly planets, and then here I am like struggling for my material needs. But if I had gone there, I wouldn't have to struggle that much. There's a lot more, opulence and enjoyment that there comparatively to here. But I don't know. I just wanted to share that as a reflection.
Sorry, a lot more opulence where, sorry?
In like the heavenly planets,
Oh, okay.
a lot of enjoyment there. So like more subtle form, but it's like more enjoyment. I don't know. I was just reflecting on that. If like I don't know, I just wanted to make that statement.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing. Does anyone else want to share any?
I think sometimes I feel that my awareness doesn't grasp that I am on that battlefield, and that I am really facing like such a challenge. I'm not aware of it, so I cannot even know that, yes, that is my door for my improvements. I think that's the dilemma, that oftentimes I feel that I don't have the capacity to see that, yeah, this is the opportunity and I'm in it and I'm about to move through. Because when I'm in it, I may feel a little defeated. I may feel like a little less spirited and a little less shaktified. That is just what's on my mundane lifestyle. That's what's still happening. Because in hindsight, then yes, everything I agree what was wrong. Like I look back, I'm like, oh, yeah, it was so terrible, and I really thought I'm gonna die or not gonna make it as a whole person. But then looking back, it's like I sailed through it, and actually it opened up to kind of new insights, healings, or et cetera, et cetera. But being in it, that's still, it's that kind of a level of awareness. If that's the hope, I'm all for it. But it's like the truth is like it's still a little hard to see.
I love that, Gangalila. You always make such pertinent comments. And actually, it's interesting because my mother was talking about this the other day, and we had this program, and she was talking about how spiritual life is about living in the now. And at the moment, I have to confess, I didn't really appreciate what she was saying. I was thinking, oh, this is like such a generic thing. Like, they talk about living in the now, right? There's even a book, right, called The Power of Now. And
it's very Instagram yoga,
Yeah, exactly. It's like pop spirituality, right? So my mother doesn't normally talk like that. So it did kind of throw me. I was like, what is she talking about? And she's like spiritual life is about living in the now. Like it's about now. But now that you're saying this to me, I'm connecting the dots. I'm like, yes, that is absolutely right. Because it is like that. Because actually spiritual life, it's like you're always, there's a pop quiz that's always going on.
Yeah.
Right. No, so that examination is always going on. Are you aware of it or not?
Right.
Like, what is the examination? What is the lesson? What is the teaching? What is the opportunity for growth that it's happening right now? So I love that. I love that, Gangalu, because you're so right. I mean, I go through that all the time too. I go through some difficulty, some challenge, and then, weeks later, months later, maybe even years later, I look back and I can appreciate, oh, I got something from that. Why does it have to be 10 years later that I learned the lesson?
Which makes it really interesting to, like, we kind of dismiss it almost, saying like in the now it's such a pop. I liked what you said, pop spirituality, like pop, but the truth is it is maybe one of the hardest things to actually really do. And we all pretend that we are able to be in the very now, even though we are really struggling.
Oh, that was a wonderful comment. And Marie's been putting some things in her chat. Do you want to say anything, Marie?
I was just thinking well, one of the things I said was some of my most recent things that I've realized I finally learned the lesson of happened like 30, 35 years ago. So like that's a lot of years of pain to like
Right.
drag around. And now
Mm.
I'm having to unlearn all of the habits that I learned to try to avoid more of that.
Mm.
But it's awareness is one level, and then you get to deal with response. Like, and actually I've gotten to the point where my subconscious becomes aware that I'm learning something before my conscious does. And then I can tell from the response that I'm getting. Like this morning, I'm like trying to pray and I'm like, hold on. I've closed myself off. Like, oh crap. God's
Wait,
got
sorry,
a lesson
sorry,
for
can
me.
you- Sorry, can you
yeah.
say that again? Can you say that again? What you're
I've
saying about
closed
getting a
myself off.
response? No, but
Um,
back up a little bit.
yeah,
What you
okay.
said about seeing the response.
Well,
You put that in the chat as well, and I didn't quite understand.
Yeah,
As you are aware and how you are responding.
my response when I'm aware that I'm in the middle of learning something from what I'm going through tends to be to shut down, to close myself off. I don't like this process. I didn't agree to this. Nobody
I didn't
sent me
sign
the
up
memo.
for this.
Yeah. And so then I shut down. So now I've gotten to the point where I actually, if I'm like this morning, I woke up, I was having trouble praying, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, I've got to figure out how to get back open. And then I need to warn everybody around me that I'm apparently going through some change. Because it's just, I don't know what it is. But like, I've learned that resistance is my response. And so like sometimes that's actually what brings it to conscious awareness. I'm aware on some level enough to rebel.
Yeah.
But I don't have enough awareness to know what I'm learning or what it is, what part of the struggles I'm dealing with or doing the instruction or any of that. It's really odd, but I guess it's better than not knowing at all.
Yeah, I mean,
for 30 years.
it's a start, right? It's like, like I've never been to an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, but what I've heard is that you begin by raising your hand and saying, I'm an alcoholic. Right? Like that recognition, that's the beginning, right? So that's a huge step. That is huge. And what you're saying, it reminds me of I mean, I quote this a lot. Right? It's one of my favorite quotes by the English writer E.M. Forster. How do I know what I think until I see what I say? How do I know what I think until I see what I say? So like these circumstances come up, or different events, they trigger us in different ways, and they bring things out of us that we didn't know were there. When we start to become more aware, like, oh, I didn't know that was in me. This is interesting. It can be a little disappointing, like you're saying. It's like, why am I experiencing this resistance? Why am I responding like this?
A few weeks ago, I was praying and I heard myself say, I want to make this change so that things will get easier. And then I went, oh, hold on. I think things will get easier. No, that wasn't actually part of the bargain. No wonder I'm frustrated. Yeah.
And yesterday we visited this Shivananda ashram, and one of the points that we discussed was how there's a danger of imitationism in spiritual practice, and how like this is why like we can't imitate persons who like practice their spiritual life in a solitary way, because there are some enlightened souls, like they prefer to continue their service to God in a solitary way. But then the problem is if you go and imitate that. But my point being is that like this is one of the reasons why we need to have a sangha. We need to have an association. We need to have people. We need to have things happening to us. Whereas if we're like sealing ourselves up in a cave somewhere or in our room, you know, we're not gonna be able to engage and see what's inside. All the things inside of us that need to get purified, that need to come out, that opportunity won't come. You know, so this is one of the reasons why we need to associate with others, you know, and you know, let these things come out and learn from them and grow from them. It's so crucial. It's so important. Any other any final thoughts from anyone? Saver Rupa, you want to share anything?
Dandavats, I'm so happy to be here and make it to this meeting, and all of you are so inspirational. I think from what Nahush had said, I always kind of wonder how did I end up here? And you know, a lot of like other devotees' journeys. So it was interesting to know that as a kid, he actually thought of that phrase. And I think to that, it made me think that okay, I'm not so good with the names and remembering a lot of things, but it was noted or said that even the demigods are lining up to take birth here. You can just correct me if I'm wrong, because it's one of the maybe easiest way, not easiest, but simplest, I think, ways to for your sadhana, your practice, to chant the holy name. And something that constantly comes to the foreground for me, where I always see these messages or read that phrase, is where I think it's Srila Sridhar Maharaj says that the environment is good and everything that's happening to us is for our best interest. And it was in, I think, the book Inner Fulfillment, where it says that God's so merciful, or Krishna so merciful, that he's actually giving us, helping us to purify ourselves by bringing these, what we think is like, you know, bad stuff, bringing that to the fore so that we can eliminate our karma, something to that effect. So yeah, that was quite, that just seems to constantly come up for me.
Yeah, I mean, that teaching, you know, there's this famous verse in Srimad Bhagavatam, you know, Tattenu Kampam Susamikshama, you know this verse by now, which is discussing this point that you know, the wise souls, they not only accept responsibility for everything that comes to them, you know, that actually I've created this, you know, due to my previous karma. Not only that, but they also see how the Lord's affection and grace is actually behind, coming to help them in some way. So that verse, Srila Sridhar Maharaj describes it as the highest regulation given in any scripture. The highest regulation given in any scripture. You know, so it is it's one of those verses that, you know, one of those teachings that we apply every day, you know, we think about every day, and it's so crucial, so essential for us. We've had a few friends join us now at the end of our meeting. I see Dana's just, you know, Dana, we actually changed this meeting to 10 a.m. California time, so we're coming to the end.
Sorry, I'm so sad I missed it. Sorry.
No, well, we're happy you could join us at least for a few minutes. Oh gosh, there's more now. Now, Jolie Martin, I think maybe you're joining for the first time. Welcome. And somebody else here. And we had a George as well. They've just popped out now. And now someone else is also tuning in. Well, thank you so much for sharing, Seva Rupa. Anyone else want to, before we close? I see Tunga Vidya has joined us. Anyone else want to share before we close our meeting for today?
I just have some devotee love. When we have someone as lovely as you sharing such sweet nectar, this is why they come rushing in, even at the last moment, to get a good darshan of you is well worth it. Thank you for this lovely class. I was not schooled in reading Sanskrit, so hearing you talk to me in this way is like listening to my grandmother read me my favorite story. Thank you. Thank you again.
Ah. Oh, that's so sweet of you, Anjo. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the encouragement. I'm very grateful. Grateful to have such sweet friends. Okay, well, we still have someone connecting to audio, so I want to let them at least connect before we say goodbye. But it's been a really nice meeting. I mean, all these meetings are really nice. And by the way, we're putting these on Spotify now. For anyone who likes to follow podcasts, we can share it in the group on Spotify and also Apple Podcasts. So if anyone wants to follow, they're more edited versions too, which can be nice for listening again later. So Tunga, Vidya, and Jolie, you're joining us, I think, for the first time. Do you want to introduce yourselves, or do you want to remain anonymous?
So, I'm sorry to interrupt, but like my lawyer told me to go here for some reason. He just told me to, yeah.
Your lawyer?
I'm sorry. I
Who's
know
your
you may
lawyer?
look. Oh, wait, yuck. His name is Bob Ross. He just invited me here.
Oh, okay. Well, that's so cool. Is the Spotify under your name? Let me see. Are you from Palatine? Somebody says here. No. Okay. Well, Chintamani says she'll share the link in our group. Well, that's awesome. Whoever you came here, that's awesome. Wonderful. Oh, now we have a blue also joining us. Okay. So everyone's welcome to join at any moment, even in our last few minutes. But if you want to be here for the full meeting, we are beginning. The time is 10 to 11 California time. But we are posting recordings afterwards on YouTube and Facebook, and now also on Spotify. So you can always catch up. Okay, well, it's been a wonderful meeting. I'll sign out here. Thank you all for joining.
Thank you
And,
so much, Didi.
Gangalila, do you want to pray us out?
Oh, well, I would like to say thank you so much for sharing.